ABU was doing all of the things. So I would say, where will I start from here and still move to another university? Let me go to the one where the whole thing will be. So that's how I chose ABU and went in there and did my vet medicine. I thank God I went on very well, came out one of the best students, and things worked out well. But in between, and that's the Nigeria we have, there were a lot of crises going on at the time. We got into ABU September 1966. I remember that day.
That was the period of political crisis in Nigeria.
We had all the crisis in Nigeria, at that time. 10 days later, September 29, there was a lot of rioting on the university campus where people were killed, workers and all that kind of thing. A lot of our colleagues came back to the South because of that. But kind of stayed on. My argument was always saying, so Nigeria will settle. I will go to Ibadan because that was the only veterinary school. I will still come back to Zaria anyway. God will save me. And so that's why I stayed in ABU throughout the period.
What did you see on the 29th of September?
On the 29th of September.
1966.
Let me start with the night before. We were in the student bustry where we were drinking Coke and all that one. There's a news item that comes up around 9:30 in the morning called Labarun Dunia or something like that, But we suddenly noticed after the news that a lot of our colleagues from the north left the buttery. We used to stay there till about 11, 12. But this was around 9:30, 10. And then we suddenly noticed the place emptying. And many of our colleagues from the north went away. Later on, we don't know how true it is, that they had that the news that they said some people from the north were killed in Port Harcourt. That was what was the news. And it was soon after that they all began to move out. And the story, I have no confirmation, but I can confirm what I saw. The story was that they went to the village, which was across Samaru village, and kind of instigated some people to retaliate. Because the next morning, when we woke up, the engineering faculty was just being built at that time. Most of the workers were from the south. And so early in the morning, there was shouts and things around 6, when people were being killed, slaughtered, all that kind of thing. We were about to go in for breakfast when the university authorities then took all of us into a big room where there was a glass door. So we were seeing what was going on right outside, in which people were being pursued with cutlass and running after them. A few days after this thing, we still saw a few dead bodies all over. So there was crisis. And a lot of our people then came back south because they were scared about, what could happen to them or this thing. A few of us stayed. It was like...
Why did you stay?
Like I said, I looked at it and I said, I believe that Nigeria problem will be sorted out. So in another 6 months, we sorted out. I'm back in Ibadan. 2 years later, I'm sick back in Zaria. So why didn't I just stay? There was no cogent reason. But I remember the night of that crisis, that night when there was killing, there was a story that they were still coming back to deal with other students who are not from the north. And so that were a lot of our colleagues. Then moved, the police came, took them to the police station in Zaria, somewhere not too far from Samaru. But a few of us stayed on. And they were saying that the story was that anybody who was neither Yoruba or not, they were going to deal with them. I remember.
So whether you were Yoruba doesn't matter.
It didn't make a difference.
It was not just about the Igbo.
It wasn't about Igbo alone. There was some kind of quote sympathy for the Yorubas because of Akintola. I mean, these are things, let's say. But of course, the average northerner knows Yoruba with marks. So people of us who grew up in Midwest, who had no marks, there's no way you can prove you're Yoruba. But still, I remember that night, a lot of people came to my room, a lot of my colleagues from Government College Ughelli, who did not leave, came to my room, and we hung all my Yoruba dresses, in my room. The room was like this narrow thing. So I was staying right by the door. The rest were inside. The argument was that if they ask, I would say, they will ask me to speak Yoruba. I will speak Yoruba. I will say all of us are Yoruba. They will see Yoruba clothes hung over today. But nobody came that day. But that was the story we had. But that's how we stayed. So nothing happened thereafter. But these are the truth of what happened and why people. Eventually, some of those who ran back came back to join us in 1969 or thereabout. When it was time to do the clinker. By then, Nigeria has settled. So it was like, why run? If God has saved us to this point, He will save us to the end. And that's the reason why I stayed.
So that experience, how did that define your feeling of Nigeria?
Even up to now, it's a bit difficult not to remember that time. It's something ingrained in your memory. Why would they do such a thing? Why will you? What? Particularly for somebody like me, who started in Yoruba land, went to Bende, Delta, where I had all the love and care. And if not for that initial thing in Zaria, and the rest of my stay in ABU was friendly and decent. So basically, Nigerians, we are not evil, as people tend to say. And I said the point that it's the human being first. It's not whether you are Yoruba or whether you are Igbo or whatever. It is the human being in you that comes out under the cloak of your tribe. If you're a bad person, basically, you will be a bad person. There are good people amongst the Igbos. There are bad people amongst the Yorubas. There are also, anywhere you go, there are fanatics in different areas. So let's not begin to make it sound as if people have been living together for all these years. We need to find a way of agreeing amongst ourselves. What is the limit of what you can do and what cannot do in this relationship? Even in husband and wife. Abi, you marry, you see how all the problem, but you reach an agreement. This is how we're going to live our life. The one you don't like, I won't do it. The one I like, we do it. If we get back to that level, Nigeria is and in spite of what I keep repeating, I owe this country more than I can ever pay back. It will be an ungrateful person who will go through my generation and will say, because Nigeria is this now, therefore, we forgot the things of the past.
Nigeria took care of your generation.
Totally.
You got scholarship.
Totally.
To university level.
Mm-hmm. I got a job the following day I came out of university. No, so because I was in federal scholarship and I took the job in Ibadan. VOM, because as a veterinarian, I was supposed to work in VOM. VOM, a year that was just asking me to come and take up my job. Until I then got to that, because UI was a federal institution. Therefore, that was how I managed not to go back to this thing. So this country was a great country. And it took good governance. I think we must continue to stress that. It was the people at the leadership that this thing. Of course, they had their quarrel, and which also created some problems also. But when they were good and working together, this was a great country. This was a great country.